A fire has erupted at one of Saudi Arabia's strategically important oil facilities, and authorities still don't know what caused it. Early reports from Saudi Arabia say a fire broke out at the Aramco Refinery complex in Jazan, in the kingdom's southwest. Fire crews were deployed, and Saudi authorities later confirmed that the blaze had been extinguished. No injuries were reported, but there is one detail that makes this incident far more significant than an ordinary industrial fire. The cause is still unknown, and that uncertainty comes at an extremely dangerous moment for the Middle East, because Saudi Arabia sits directly inside a region where oil infrastructure, missile attacks, shipping routes, and the wider US-Iran conflict are becoming increasingly interconnected. So the immediate question is simple. What actually happened inside the Jazan facility? And perhaps even more importantly, why is a fire at a Saudi oil facility happening now? To understand why this story matters, you have to look at the location. Jazan is located in southwestern Saudi Arabia, close to the Red Sea and relatively near Yemen. The Aramco refinery complex there is designed to process hundreds of thousands of barrels of crude oil per day. That makes the facility more than just another industrial site. It is part of the infrastructure supporting Saudi Arabia's enormous energy system. And this is where the story becomes even more complicated. Saudi energy facilities have repeatedly been exposed to regional security threats. Missiles and drones have previously targeted Saudi oil infrastructure, particularly during periods of escalation involving the Houthis in Yemen. And the Jazan facility itself has recently faced disruption. That means today's fire isn't happening in isolation. But there is a critical distinction. Previous attacks do not prove that today's fire was an attack. Saudi authorities have not publicly blamed Iran, the Houthis, or anyone else for this particular incident. And until investigators establish the cause, any claim that the refinery was deliberately attacked would be speculation. Yet the timing is impossible to ignore. The Middle East is already experiencing an extraordinary level of pressure. The conflict involving the United States and Iran has created enormous uncertainty across the region. And the biggest concern isn't limited to the battlefield. It is what happens when a conflict begins reaching the infrastructure that the global economy depends on. Oil refineries, pipelines, export terminals, ports, and above all, the routes through which energy reaches the rest of the world. Saudi Arabia is one of the world's most important oil producers. So when something happens to a major Saudi energy facility, markets don't just look at the fire. They look at the possibility of what could happen next. Could another facility be targeted? Could production be disrupted? Could shipping become even more dangerous? And could the conflict eventually create a much larger global energy crisis? Those questions are now hanging over the region. But there is another detail that makes today's incident especially interesting. The Jazan refinery had already been affected by regional violence. Previous reports indicated that operations were disrupted following an attack in late July. So today's fire comes after an already difficult period for the facility. That doesn't tell us what caused the new blaze, but it does tell us something important. Saudi Arabia's energy infrastructure is operating under extraordinary security pressure, and that creates a dangerous chain reaction. When one facility is damaged, another facility becomes more important. When one shipping route becomes dangerous, pressure shifts somewhere else. And when global oil supplies become uncertain, even a relatively small disruption can have consequences far beyond the Middle East. This is why today's fire is being watched so closely. Not because we know who caused it, but because we don't. Right now, the facts are limited. There was a fire, it was extinguished. No injuries were reported, and the cause remains under investigation. That's what we know. What we don't know is potentially much more important. Was it an equipment failure? An industrial accident? A technical problem? Or something deliberately caused? At this moment, there is no confirmed answer, and that uncertainty matters because the region is already operating under extreme tension. If investigators determine that this was simply an accident, the story could eventually fade. But if evidence emerges pointing toward deliberate sabotage or another form of attack, the significance would change dramatically. Because an attack on Saudi energy infrastructure during an already escalating US-Iran conflict could signal that the economic battlefield of this war is expanding, and that could put pressure on oil markets, shipping routes, governments, and consumers around the world. For now, all eyes are on Saudi authorities. Investigators will need to determine exactly where the fire started, what equipment was involved, whether there was structural damage, and whether the incident affected refinery operations. The answers could come quickly, or they could take time. But one thing is already clear. The Middle East's energy infrastructure has become one of the most important pressure points in this conflict, and Saudi Arabia is sitting directly in the middle of that pressure zone. Today's fire may turn out to be an isolated industrial incident, or it could become another piece of a much larger story unfolding across the Gulf. And that is the question the world is now waiting to have answered. Because when oil infrastructure catches fire during a regional war, the flames may disappear quickly, but the consequences can spread much farther. This is Conflict Insider.